Welcome back to the Grand Solar Minimum channel. Today is Monday, April 27th, 2020. Thank you for joining us today for your Grand Solar Minimum news update. Let's get started with the space weather. Right now, our solar wind speed's coming in at a moderate 436.6 kilometers per second. And as of right now, the density is at 0. It could be a glitch, or it could be just a very, very fine particle stream that we are entering now. And let's focus now on the sunspot that we have, sunspot AR2760. And interesting, I'm going to show an article real quick before we continue with the program. Looking over at SPACEWEATHER.com. Oh boy, no, that's not it either. What happened? There we go. Oh boy, that's funny. Because it was there. No, it's not. Bear with me, folks. Let me get this fixed really quick. This will take but a quick second. Sunspot AR2760 has, interestingly, a very small friend to go along with it, and that is AR2761. Very small. Now, what is odd about this is that we actually have two sunspots, and apparently they're from each solar cycle. The bigger one is at the top, and that is right now to be understood as solar cycle 24, but the sunspot in the southern part of this equatorial region appears to be a part of solar cycle 25. Very interesting. Today, there are two sunspots in the sun's southern hemisphere. Their magnetic polarity reveals something interesting. Two solar cycles are active at once. Take a look at this magnetic map of the sun's surface with sunspots inset from NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory. One sunspot, AR2760, polarity is negative positive, belongs to the old solar cycle 24. And just so we can see which one is solar cycle 24, this is the sunspot from solar cycle 24. This one is from 25. Now, this is a very, very, very small region. I would be surprised if this actually gets officially labeled. As you see to your left, we are not seeing anything for AR2761. Nonetheless, they are labeling it here in this article. Continues to read on here, as while the AR2761 polarity is positive negative, which belongs to the new solar cycle 25. This is normal. Solar cycles always overlap at their boundaries, sprinkling solar minimum with a mixture of old and new sunspots. We might see more such combinations in the months ahead as we slowly grind our way through one of the deepest solar minima in a century. The simultaneous appearance of two solar cycles suggests a type of temporary balance. In fact, the tipping point might have already been reached. So far this year, there have been 7 numbered sunspots. 5 of them, 71%, have come from solar cycle 25. This compares to only 17% from the 2019 sunspot cycle and 0% from 2018. Solar cycle 25 is still weak, but it is coming. And just like we have broadcasted on this channel, solar cycle 25, its solar maximum smooth sunspot count is only supposed to peak near 115 to 130 on the high side. Some have it as low as 61. So solar cycle 25, and believe me, guys, if you guys can see our logo here to the left of your bottom corner screen there, and there it is showing you solar cycles over the past few years. And so this is typical for this time, as far as seeing two sunspots appearing at the same time from each cycle. It is normal. The only thing that kind of strikes me as kind of odd is the location of them, I guess. I guess I understood outgoing cycle would be closer to the equatorial region, and the new coming part of a cycle would be closer to the southern. Now, it is still technically southern, AR 2761, but higher than normal at that point. But these solar cycles are predicted compared 24 to 23. We started to see a decline in 23. 24 was a little low. But when your sunspot maximum is around 164, 168, and normal is 220, 180 to 220 is normal. So we were a little below normal with solar cycle 24. Solar cycle 25 appears to be a weak cycle that is predicted by many scientists. You heard SPACEWEATHER.com acknowledging that this is a weak cycle and that right now we are in one of the deepest minima in over a century. And the last minima was 150 years, the deepest in 150 years. So we'll see where they actually finish up with this, because also back to the Space Weather Station, cosmic rays, which I did not change today, which I should have changed that, but I'll go ahead and find it here on SpaceWeather.com. We are back up to 11%. Again, here at SpaceWeather.com, they give you the current readings of cosmic radiation in the atmosphere, neutron counts. It gives you the 7-day change, and then it shows you the record high, which was in December of 2009, and the record low, which was in June of 1991. So we are right now flirting with beating the space age record in cosmic radiation neutron counts as far as it goes. We are at 11% right now. We're 0.7% away from tying that record. We've gotten as close as 11.1% in the last 2 weeks. Now, this is the second time that I've witnessed it go into the 11% in the last 30 days. I have not witnessed it do that yet. So is this an indication that cosmic radiation is about to even jump up, maybe even higher than 11.7, possibly in the 12% range? We'll see. The end of April is near. May, the beginning of May, early May into end of May is when predicted peak cosmic radiation will happen, just based on information that I've seen and what I've read. So we will continue to monitor this as we move along through this current ending of a cycle and beginning of a new cycle. But KP indices are sitting at a 2 with a 24-hour max of a 3. There's no large coronal holes to report, so nothing expected as far as any kind of solar wind attacking our magnetic field. There is a coronal hole forming at the very northern tip of our star here in the north to your left here in the top left corner. You'll see it kind of form towards the end of this run here. Let me see if I can. Yeah, I do. Right up here. Oh, nope. Hang on, folks. Right up in here, you'll see this coronal hole kind of widen out here at the end of the run. But that's way too far above, and if anything, it would just graze our magnetic field. Little small opening right here. It could, as it is now Earth facing, and possibly it's directly facing at Earth, almost at the same level as well. So continue to monitor that. Let's jump over at Space Weather section here at thegrandssolarminimum.com, as we will take a look and see if we have any future sunspots to be concerned about. And there are current 2 right now. But beyond that, we got some minor activity beyond the eastern limb right here, and maybe a slight active region in this area as well, which is days away from the eastern limb. So after these 2 minor sunspots, which are only equaling 14 at this time, once those fade away, it could be blank for a while. But I want to point out, too, that we only made it to like 19 days in a row, I think, without a sunspot. And one thing I can tell you is that I've noticed that in December and February, we got a streak of 30 plus days without sunspots. That was an uptick. And of course, we all know in January, it started off with sunspots for at least 18 days. A couple spotless days, another spot shows up. And then after that, we went on a run through February, which lasted 30 days plus. So March and April, again, we had 2 runs of around 19 to 21 days without sunspots in March and in April. So is this an indication that we are going to see the uptick in sunspots as solar cycle 25 begins? And my guess is we're probably at least another 6 to 8 months away before we start seeing a slight uptick in sunspot activity. Nothing to make a difference to yank us out of a minimum at that time. But still, to be realistic, we are at the bottom, and soon we will start seeing an uptick, but a minor uptick compared to what we saw in solar cycle 24, compared to what we saw in solar cycle 23. It's going to be a fraction of that. So even though this solar cycle 25 will experience a maximum period, it's not going to be anywhere the strength of an average or below average. This one is expected to be very well below average when it comes to the sunspot smooth count as far as maximum sunspots in the cycle. All right, let's go ahead and check out a few articles I dug up today. Once again, at the Watchers, this is kind of tragic here. More than 100,000 people affected by the once-in-a-generation floods in Yemen, reports the UN. On March 25th, the destructive flash floods tore through temporary capital Aden, killing at least 2 people and causing damage to properties. The country was hit by a second major wave of flooding on April 13th, when heavy rains triggered widespread inundations in Sana'a, also resulting in 2 fatalities and massive damage. And then the third wave hit on April 22nd, when the government declared Aden a disaster area following the catastrophic flash flooding that claimed the lives of 10 people. Countless families have lost everything, said Lisa Grande, the humanitarian coordinator for Yemen. This tragedy comes on top of the COVID-19 crisis, which comes on top of the pre-famine last year, which came on top of the worst cholera outbreak in modern history. Among the worst areas hit are Aden, Abayan, Lad, Marib, and Sana'a's governorates, as well as Sana'a City. Roads and bridges and houses have been damaged. Electricity grids were hit. Water supplies have been contaminated, cutting thousands of people of the access to their basic needs. The situation was even harder for thousands of displaced families who have lost their homes, household supplies, and food rations. Just absolute tragic, the destruction. I don't think an area of this world is suffering more than these folks. I mean, my gosh, 3 waves of catastrophic flooding, pre-famine last year, coming off one of the worst cholera outbreaks in the history. Now we got the COVID-19. There's 4 different natural catastrophes that this region is dealing with. Wow. And this has nothing to do with global warming, folks. Truly none of this. How much more suffering to the people of Yemen can they take? Humanitarian agencies have provided aid to the affected population, including emergency health care, clean water, survival items, food, and even shelter. Organizations are also involved in draining water and cleaning inundated areas. The solution is clear. The parties to the conflict need to find the courage to stop fighting and start negotiating. They're also dealing with warfare as well. So there's your 5th catastrophe. Thanks again to the Watchers.news for covering this. I had not heard anything about this today in the news or yesterday. At least this should get at least a 30-second mention on every major news outlet, as these people are clearly suffering big time. And if there's any way to reach out to donate to help areas like this that have just been ravaged and torn, I mean, this is not about a political thing anymore, folks. This is a people thing. And these people are being just ripped apart every week by weather. Disease has been thriving in this region for years now. And it's just, I mean, I can't imagine the toll it's taken on their psyche. Checking out some cold weather that's going to be happening. Cold blast to sweep across parts of Australia. Melbourne expect coldest April day since 1960. Okay, newsworthy because, yes, it is their winter, so they're supposed to be getting colder, or it's getting close to their winter. It says here a deep polar low is forecast to sweep across parts of southeastern Australia over the next couple of days, bringing cold, wet, and windy conditions. Heavy rains are expected to come in some areas, while Melbourne could experience its coldest day, an April day, in 60 years. It says it's forming this cold front around the southern Indian Ocean, driven by a deep polar low. It is set to bring cold, wet, and windy conditions, and it's going to remain throughout most of this week. Everything changes from Wednesday on. In Victoria, we'll see rain developing overnight on Tuesday and then spreading eastwards, reaching Melbourne early afternoon on Wednesday, which will likely bring some thunderstorms before really cold air moves over. So a little bit of everything for these folks down here in the southeastern parts of Australia. Then up to 12 inches of snow is expected through the alpine regions of Canberra, Victoria, New South Wales, and Tasmania on April 30th. As we head into Wednesday, we'll start to see some significant prefrontal rain in areas where it's desperately needed across the northern country of Victoria to the state's northeast and then west of the divide in New South Wales. Aside from rains and snows, hail is also in store for southeastern states, including Victoria, on Wednesday onwards as well. And cold max temperature forecast to be 8 to 10 degrees below average, snow level dropping to 1,200 meters during the day, snow on the northeast ranges as well. Large waves to be expected with high winds as well. Southern New South Wales and the ACT will be very wet on Wednesday and Thursday. About 1.9 inches of rain is expected in Canberra. It will be cold in the capital with a temperature of around 62 degrees on Wednesday, pummeling down to a 48 degrees on Fahrenheit on Friday, and a piercing low of 37.4 degrees Fahrenheit as the region moves into a very windy and cold Thursday. So chilly temperatures for the folks down under. Thanks again to Watchers.news. And then we have our first tropical depression to talk about. And this is also a record. This is the earliest one we've seen in the Pacific. It says here in the East Pacific Ocean on Saturday, April 25th, 2020, as the earliest East Pacific Ocean tropical depression on record. The season officially runs from May 15th to November 30th. So a little early, I'd say. The system is moving northwest and is expected to become a remnant low today and dissipate by early Tuesday, April 28th. This is the earliest East Pacific tropical depression on record since reliable records began in 1966. The previous record holder for the earliest East Pacific tropical cyclone was Tropical Storm Adrian, which formed on May 10th, 2017. The second place was held by one TD1E, which formed on May 10th, 2018. So we have a very early, and when you talk about these tropical depressions striking, this crushed it April 27th, and the record previous to that was May 10th. So this article just basically gives an overview of previous stats on hurricanes, but thought this was noteworthy to mention. This is pretty early, and there have been some talk of warmer temperatures in the oceans, concerns about an active hurricane season. I don't see it, honestly. I could be off, especially when you're talking about the Gulf. Not impressed right now with the developments so far in the Gulf, although we are very, very early. But at the same time, you got to have a strong warmth in the Gulf. And also, check out these temperatures here. I mean, these are pretty cool waters right now. The North Atlantic, I know, is below baseline at this current time. Mid-Atlantic is above, but not much. These are much cooler waters, so if any kind of waves were to come off at this time, obviously, this is what we're going to watch from here going out. The Gulf could be warmer, cooler near the coast. Could be warmer. So, but we're getting lots of extreme warmth right here just below Mexico. And that flows up usually. We get caught. So this is where the Gulf is getting its energy when we do get these warm, moist flows here. And they combine with these northern jet streams and instability and causing these severe weathers here throughout the South. So very warm temperatures support the growth of this particular storm system, but it will dissipate by Tuesday. Temperatures are not all that stable here as well, in my opinion. And this is shaping up, in my opinion, as well, the beginnings of what we are witnessing to a possible La Nina forming for this year as temperatures continue to drop in this region here, in the El Nino 3-4 region. All right, so let's check out over here at SOT.net. Cabin completely buried in snow 3 times this winter in Iceland. Now, before I get pelted by the internet trolls, it's Iceland, dummy. Yeah, I get that. But this particular cabin, in the 42 years that this homeowner had owned this cabin, has never seen this. So, but not only did it happen once, not twice, but 3 times. And the removal of the snow is incredible, guys. This cabin was buried 3 different times. They've removed the snow from the rooftops, dug walkways. Another storm would hit, bury the cabin again, more removal. And then to get it all to go away, to remove it all, we're talking chainsaws. We're cutting out blocks of ice from where the snow had just compacted everything. Yeah. 3 times. Imagine just clearing off the roof of your house and then coming back to finding it like this. Oh, where's my cabin? Oh, it's buried in snow. Now, this is what the cabin looks like in summer. It's not summer, obviously. But could you imagine? This happened 3 times where they dug it out and it snowed again, filled back up, dug it out 3 times. Not once, not twice, 3 times. So it'll be interesting to see temperatures. And when was, I think this last snowstorm, the 3rd time was April 13th. That was the 3rd wave of when this snow. Yeah, wow. So it'll be interesting to see what Dr. Roy Spencer's findings will be on May 1st for April's temperatures. If we're seeing snow anomalies like this, Canada had some pretty deep snows as well. Northeast of the United States has been relatively chilly. Most of the Great Lakes and Northern Plains states, definitely. And even the southern states have seen cooler than usual temperatures recently. Got a heat wave going on in southwestern part of our United States right now. But other than that, it's been kind of a meh type of spring so far for the majority of us. So if anything, we didn't see the crazy big snow, cold weather snaps that we were expecting to see in the United States this winter. But if you look at the overall globe, in the northern hemisphere especially, we saw our share of snow and cold for sure. And now we're starting to see early record cold in the southern hemisphere. And does that paint the alarm for this coming fall for us? Will we see record-breaking cold temperatures in September and October, like they're experiencing right about that period of their season right now? All right, I want to move on to this whole talk of food shortages. I think a week or so ago, I kind of took the side of one particular YouTuber on the opinion of not to worry about food shortages, blah, 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 because at the time we only had 5% of our meat processing plants here in the United States closed. 5%, no big deal. Let's not freak out. Announcements came weeks after that. This was a couple weeks ago. Announcements came after that where there was plenty of meat in the in storage, that the United States food security is no problems. But then, since then, we've seen more plants close. So there's a couple of headlines that caught my attention when I went to do a Google search on food shortages. Russia halts wheat exports, deepening fears of global food shortages. Mari, what was something you were telling me about today that we're starting to see shortages of?
Most wheat products, a lot of people are reporting to us it's hard to find all different types of wheat products.
So
it's a mixture of crop issues and supply chain issues.
Yep.
I think the biggest thing right now is supply chain issues, but you have to prepare. And I was looking into buying, what was it, 20-something pounds, 25 pounds of wheat berries or to grind up to make my own flour and stuff. So yeah, definitely something to consider and prepare for.
So that's strike one right there. I'm like, all right. So, and then I'm looking at all the wasted crops that are being wasted across the United States because farmers are not selling as much because the demand's not there for restaurants. There's strike two. And then strike three is now another Tyson plant is closing because of more outbreaks in these meat processing plants. Guys, check this out. This is from the Sun, but meat shortage coming, says Tyson. Now, this is not some YouTube channel. This is Tyson themselves telling us that we are going to be experiencing shortages. And they're not going to allow me to read this article. I really love how these, that's how you get to subscribe, I guess. That's how they make their money. So, point being here, and that's fine. I don't have to go on about this, but I know I made a comment a couple weeks ago, kind of reassuring folks it's okay, don't panic. Well, in the last 2 weeks, we have doubled the percentage of meat processing plants that are closed now, which is 10%. And when you have Tyson telling people to buy meat now, shortages are coming as coronavirus hits food chain. So I guess what I'm trying to say here, and proof of that is, if you're one of those people that does the Instacart, the ordering your groceries or picking them up, and you do a delivery order for some meats, certain meats are being substituted out. Turkey sausage was put in my order the other day instead of regular pork sausage. Certain cuts of meat are being substituted with other cuts of meat that aren't even close. Just the fact that you're getting meat is basically the grocery store saying, just be happy you're getting meat. So I'm noticing it. Mari and I both are noticing that things are starting to change a little bit in our local grocery stores. Thankfully, Governor Cuomo is now starting up the old government cheese program back up again. And what does that mean? That he is one of the many people who are fed up with watching milk being dumped down the drain. So the state of New York is going to buy that extra milk from farmers and process it into cheese, into yogurts, cottage cheese, stuff like that. So kudos to the governor for trying to, and then those products go to food banks across New York, by the way. So kudos to the governor of New York for trying to, it's better than nothing, right? You've got such a strong demand in these food banks in New York City and all over New York. Cheese. Hey, I like cheese. I could snack on that. If I'm hungry enough, when it comes down to it, so at least we're being smart with the milk. Now, I'd like to see a similar program being developed for the crops, because that's a shame, watching these perfectly good crops being grounded into the ground. It's like, oh, there's got to be, but I get it. There's probably a lot of manpower involved in picking up the crops, harvesting them, taking them into a a charity, finding the transportation, finding the workers, finding the people to sanitize. I mean, I get it. There's a lot involved. So it's just easier and less time consuming to just trash the crops. Well, that might have been the case in the world that we knew before what we're going through now. So I encourage everybody to shop their local farms. Try to support them as much as possible. Mari is in the process right now of developing a website for at least the state of New York that will help people find these local farmers and help organize these projects of getting food to these food banks. Anything will be welcome. Look, when I look at the news and I see people in California, their cars are lined up miles and miles and miles and miles, and they're trying to get food for their family, and all they're getting is a box and a bag of food. That's it. How long does that last a family of 4 or 5 people? 2 days? 3 days maybe, tops? And, so right now we need to be a little bit more thinking outside the box, trying to figure out the way to put these crops that can't be sold right away to use and sold somehow. Pulling some money out of it is better than losing everything. But then again, you also have to remember that we're living in times where we have to practice social distancing and a lot of other new practices as well. So it's a catch-22, guys, on how do you salvage the waste that we're seeing these farmers. And is it done just because it's just the only sensible thing to do for efficiency of cost and time? So we'll continue to monitor that. Hopefully we'll stop seeing these meat plants closing down. But, this is doubled in 2 weeks. And now you got Tyson telling you to buy meat now? I mean, talk about not wanting to cause a panic or anything. All right. And I thought this was funny. Joe Biden here, and this article is about, the grist on Joe Biden's climate podcast. The whole thing sounds like a voicemail 2 of your grandparents left you because of how wishy-washy and everything it is. And I went over and listened to it, and my God, was that boring. But just like always, there was a lot of, and like this guy says here, listen to the whole podcast, lots of, yes, we can do it, but not a lot of substance about what he actually plans to do. Normally I take a few notes and provide a summary and maybe offer a critique, but there was nothing to summarize. I thought about listening to it again, see if I missed anything, but decided not to. Guys, what's funny about this bottom paragraph? This is exactly what I thought when I listened to it. There's nothing to summarize. Just a lot of talking points, a lot of gibberish about how we can, we're going to climate change, we're going to fight it and save the planet, just their typical BS about green energy and no substance and no meaning or definition to it. Which leads me to my next topic here. And the biggest point that I want to make about, no, they don't like detail. Very correct. I'm glad I caught that because this is part of my review of Michael Moore's, his basically green industry bashing film. I'm sympathetic on both sides of this because on one end, I can see where people who work in this industry, this makes it look really bad to invest in solar and wind. It does. And whether or not some of the technicalities are misleading or lies, which may be. But there is a huge movement right now that wants this movie removed. Because I've watched this movie. I've encouraged everyone to go out and watch it and share it with everyone. I still do. And the reason why is not because of the misrepresentation of some of the facts, but the obvious points of the movie about green energy and the promises that they make about green energy. The biggest point of this movie was that those promises can't be kept. There were some very, very, very revealing things about Al Gore. They did an interview with Al Gore in the movie Planet of the Humans, and they were asking Al Gore's partner, his last name was Blood, which I find even more ironic. Blood and Gore was the name of this duo for Solar Project. And the interviewer asked Mr. Blood if Al Gore was a prophet PH. And Mr. Blood replied, how do you spell profit? And indicating he was talking about the financial profit and the laughs that came from those two, Blood and Gore. Oh, so it's like, okay, those guys are filthy rich from the promises of Green New Deal energy policies actually being in place in the next 5 to 10 years. Those are lies. Those are lies. Okay? We will not see any kind of green energy stabilization from the grid in 10 years or 20 years, maybe 30 years. Definitely not in the next 20 to 30 years, for sure. That's the lie that they were exposing. Watch the flick, judge yourself. There's a lot of damning things that are happening where one scene where the concert was supposed to be powered by solar energy. They went around the back and was asking questions about the solar panels and the powering of it. And they had to go to a generator for the concert because they said it was raining. Now, others will argue that it was a battery storage issue, and that may be as well. But the other damning part about that was that when they were asked about, is that why you had to go to a generator because of the rain and the cloud coverage, the guy answered, oh, we were asked to power the concert with these solar panels. Now, the guy was misleading and said the amount of solar panels they had back there was enough to power a toaster. That was a lie. But the fact that the show was being presented as a show ran by solar power, okay, and then find out that it's all a front, it's all a lie. The generators were there the whole time to run the concert. They knew that. And yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe the battery storage was the real reason why they couldn't run on the solar panels even. Okay, I get that. Well, in real life, the real answer is battery storage. They didn't have it. Nonetheless, they were never, ever going to intend to run the concert off of the solar panels in the first place. There's just so many technicalities that the film writer, from what I understand from other people's opinions, that are misleading and bold-faced lies. However, there are a lot of parts of the movie that are fact. And that is one thing right now that we all know, that green energy does not deliver right now. And it won't anytime soon. From my knowledge of green energy, they consider biomass as part of green energy. This movie shows us where the biomass comes from. Wood chips and chopping down trees. Okay? So not what I see as a compromise for burning for energy. You're talking about cutting down forests and burning wood. And some of these other cities were burning more than just wood. Am I not mistaken, Mari, that some places are actually allowed to burn plastic in these incinerations?
Yeah,
so
they have certain grades of plastic that they say their incinerators can burn safely enough. They actually are trying to do that here at an incinerator right off the Hudson River. And there's pretty much our whole community has petitioned for the EPA to actually put in air quality monitoring, because we already have a paper factory that causes a lot of pollution, and just there's a lot of cancer in this area. So that biofuel plastic crap, it doesn't sound good in my opinion. And but these entities, these energy entities, have figured out a way to sort of put a disguise on as it being green and wonderful, which is total BS.
But my point too about this is that biomass, when you look at these cities that are being ran on 100% renewable energy, the majority of them are high outputs of biomass. So they're burning trees, they're burning wood chips, they're burning garbage in some cases. Guys, I've lived in towns where they have these incinerator plants that they burn the biomass, the trees. You can smell the smoke of burning wood in the water. Okay, the groundwater tastes funny. It smells funny. The air quality is terrible. So, in my opinion, this movie is exposing biomass plants as being harmful to the environment. Forget about climate. Harmful to the environment. If it affects the smell of the breathing air, if it affects the way your water smells, I mean, to me, that is more harmful than some of these factories that emit CO2. Because as we all know, CO2 is not a pollutant. It is life. CO2 is life. But anyway, back to the Michael Moore movie. People want it removed. People on the left who follow man-made global warming want it taken down. People who work in the solar industry, they want it taken down because it misrepresents the majority of some of the solar technology, blah, blah, blah. I get that, all right? My point about this movie is that when they interviewed people who worked at these conventions that were selling these solar panels, they didn't know certain answers to questions about their solar panels. They weren't sure about their products. They didn't know. Some of them just didn't have the answers, didn't understand policy. These people that organize these green energy groups, they couldn't answer the questions that were being asked in this document. Simple, basic questions. They didn't know what biomass was. They all said, we got to get back to you on that. They wouldn't go on camera and say that biomass is part of green energy, that they weren't aware. Half of them don't even know what green energy is. So again, that was the point of Michael Moore's documentary about the Green New Deal policy cheerleaders. They don't know what they're talking about. They're lying about how quick it could be online. They don't have the answers. They don't even know everything that's involved with what they're calling green energy. They can't answer the technical and science questions. They're just puppets and mouthpieces. Now, for those of you out there who are concerned with some of the misled comments or lies that might be in the movie about solar, that's a different debate. I was talking to a gentleman, actually Lee believes this, that these solar panels on the part where they were showing the solar panels of a football field that only powered 10 houses, Lee called BS on that and told me why. And his argument was compelling because, yes, you're right, using a better solar panel does power more homes. It was more like 50 to 60 if they used a certain type of solar panels. Well, that's great. That's fine. The point is, whether it's 10, whether it's 50 to 60, that's a lot of land for a little bit of power for 50 to 60 households. Because we don't have, in my opinion, enough land out there to really put solar on the grid 100%. Now, you have to take in consideration that battery capacity is getting better each year, each decade. But in my opinion, I don't think that we are ready or there yet to have that kind of battery storage capacity to run the grid on 100% renewable, meaning solar, wind, hydro, and biomass, which I think biomass is cheating. Honestly, I don't even think biomass is green. When you think about trees being cut down for biomass plants all over the world, I mean, you're cutting down a tree that absorbs CO2, that thrives on CO2. So if you're worried about the safe number of 350, if you cut down all the trees and we're at 414 parts per million, and you're cutting down the trees because you think biomass is green, I mean, technically, if we have less trees to absorb CO2, won't CO2 levels go up? Yes, Mari.
I was going to say also they take down wood for biomass, but at the same time, these incinerator companies desperately seek out any type of wood, including like pressure treated chemical, like treated wood, which
That's
is
not
also
good.
very toxic.
That's not good at all.
I just can't imagine they could filter all of that out.
When I worked in construction, guys, you don't want to ever burn pressure treated wood, ever. It was just like it was the law in construction. You don't burn pressure treated wood. The chemicals are bad, bad, bad. And Marty's got a great point. There's no way some of these biomass plants are separating wood chips. We don't know where these wood chips are coming from half the time. That's the problem too. And just like I'm seeing here in the chat, the other problems of bird and wildlife deaths because of these solar panels. Guys, look, no matter what you think about this movie, the overall bottom line of this movie is that green energy is a false promise as far as it happening in the near future, in 10, 20, or even 30 years being 100% reliable. They've got work to do on the battery storage capacity. And I believe there are cities around the world who are starting to show off their battery capacity. There is one city that I know of, according to Lee Wheelbarger, so I'll have to look it up too as well, but he says that Burlington, Vermont is 100% solar, which means they have found battery capacity, storage capacity that other places haven't found. So if that technology starts becoming cloned across the country, we'll see. But with the GSM and the cloud coverage that we're going to be dealing with, especially now and through the 2030s into the 2040s, I mean, I can't imagine getting a lot of energy from solar panels if TCI is going to continue to drop, especially from here, even if it is through the next 10 to 15 years. You're not, and that's my point about where green energy is not going to be running the grid in the next 10 to 15 years. And that is the overall point of view of this movie, is that the lies of the Green New Deal, they're exposing them. The people that are doing these projects don't know what they're talking about. The political leaders that are behind Green New Deal don't understand the science. They can't give you straight answers. They don't have answers, and they lie about pretty much every single thing that's supposed to run off of solar and wind. It's not running off of solar and wind. And then you got to think about all the fossil fuels that have to be burned to create this green technology. So anyway, that's my rant. Maybe we'll go into a deeper topic discussion of this later in the week or in the future. More severe weather to develop across the South once again, as I'll show you here in the GFS. Just quickly go through this Tuesday night. As once again, we are dealing with overnight storms. And then we go into Wednesday, moving further east, hail, flash flooding, damaging isolated tornadoes, and damaging winds, 70 mile an hour max of that. And also, don't forget about the Northeast has two systems here in the Northeast this weekend of rain and wind, and that's keeping our temperatures rather cool as well. And then I saw this chart, and I wanted to talk about this really quick. Last year, we saw an increase of tornadic activity. This year, right now, we have had 492 tornadoes. The average is 307. The maximum to date is 550. We're not even in May yet, and May is the peak month of tornadoes. Am I right on that? I think it's May. It is May. Yes, it is May. May is the peak month of tornadoes. So we could be crushing the maximum to date number, and the fewest tornadoes in a year is 118. Obviously, we are not have to worry about breaking that record, but I was talking about, I wonder how many tornadoes we've had so far. Here is a count through April 26, 492. Again, we are just now ending April, and May and June, based on what we've seen here and the jet stream patterns and what we're going to show you here on GFS, the likelihood of seeing that number being broke at 550 is going to be there, as the South will definitely see that threat for severe weather Tuesday into Wednesday. And again, on Thursday on the East Coast, some spotty isolated tornadoes in the Carolinas and Virginia, especially Georgia and South Carolina, and possibly Jacksonville, Florida, possibly. We'll keep our eyes out. This is the second system to come through by Thursday to hit the Northeast, more heavy rain. Cold air in place for a little while, and then it tries to get a little bit mild here across the United States. More rain across the Ohio-Mississippi Valley as well. Snow in the Northwest, believe it or not, still by May 4th. So showers, moderate showers across the Midwest, into the Tennessee Valley, Missouri, parts of Kansas by May 5th. More rain on the northern plain states into the upper Great Lakes as this system moves towards the Northeast. This is actually after April 30th. We're not going to see anything major developing in the South or in the Midwest, Northeast until around the 4th of May and beyond. And May 6th, we see a system indicating that it's going to be developing in Texas and move across the South. Possibility for more severe weather again for the first week of May. And then this is what's interesting. We get into May 8th, snow still in Colorado and parts of Wyoming. Another cold front that's going to be invading the lower 48, especially in the upper northern plain states, the Great Lakes, and the Northeast by May 10th. Some moderate rain. It's trying to stay dry for the most part, okay? Texas, not so much here for the first several days of the second week of May. Check this out. There is a bit of a lull in moisture. In fact, you guys, starting May 4th in Texas, as things get a little dicey, you're going to be in hot weather here in the next couple days, and records will be broken in the Texas as far as heat. But we start to see a bit of a pattern change. Lots of rain to Texas, and by the time we get to May 13th, that system finally breaks away from Texas and moves across the South. So a huge system lull over the state of Texas for several days from the 4th all the way through the 10th of May. And that will push weather along the South as well. So we get a big break here in the South after days of and weeks of severe weather outbreaks over and over and over again. Finally, some relief starting after your next storm system, May 6th, then a few days of nothing by the time we get to May 10th, the 11th, the 12th, and then by the 13th. So we get almost a 7-day stretch possibility of the Deep South not having to deal with any thunderstorms and tornado activity. So again, GFS, any model is not really that reliable this far out, but it's just an idea of what we could see in the near future as well. Let's take a look at temperatures here across the United States over the next 16 days. And spring is alive in the South, in Texas, Kansas, Oklahoma regions, all the way through the Dakotas up until the 28th. And then we get a bit of a cold front pushing in a weak one at that overnight. Things really heat up across the central part of the United States. This is good for the farmers. They need to get these temperatures up so we can get these crops in the field and get things going here. But short-lived heat. Within 3 days, 4 days, that heat is being pushed southward. And of course, heating up in the Deep South is no unusual feat for them at this time of the year, as we're already in the first week of May at this point of this map. Now, warmer temperatures coming into Canada, which that's good news, but a mixture of some colder air as well, trying to filter down further south by May 8th. Look at this. Daytime highs across the region, making it to the 60s and 70s. Again, 60s for the Midwest and the Northern Plains is okay, but, you know, it should be a little warmer than this at this point. And then we see a little bit of dip of cold air coming in for the Northeast by May 12th. Nice day on the 12th, actually, but after that, this changed on me in the last 20 minutes, so they've reversed it. Now we're looking at May 13th for another dip of cold air from Canada, possibly. But again, these things are not very reliable that far out. So the latest run does show that by the 8th of May, we should start seeing some normal warmer temperatures across the region of the eastern part of the United States, the Midwest, the Northern Plains, the South. This changed from a half hour ago. I'm glad, but again, just another note, is it reliable to look at this date this far out to the 13th? So things are trying to warm up across the United States for spring. The central part of the United States, the plains, the Midwest. I mean, really, even on May 5th, nothing that impressive, folks. 50s and 40s across Iowa, parts of South Dakota. So, I mean, slightly below average temperatures right now in the Midwest, the East Coast, and the Northeast. The South is heating up just fine. The Central Plains in the United States is getting there. And according to GFS, we could see some warmer weather in the very northern parts of the United States and Canada within the near future. So we'll keep that posted as well. Mari, would you like to say goodbye or hello before we...
Goodbye and hello. Now, Jake, you're going to have a new show on our other channel. Is that today, Jake?
Our first of many new shows on WTF Sky. It'll be a weekly political show on Mondays. I'm going to do the best I can on covering both sides of the parties and just talking politics on Mondays. And then Tuesday or Wednesday, we haven't ironed out the dates yet. Mari will have a show that will feature just strange news from all around the world, whether it be, observations in the atmosphere or strange sounds or space weather news or whatever. Mari's going to have the bizarre and the weird covered as well. So lots of new things happening at WTF Sky and Grand Solar Minimum channel too. So we're going to keep both channels going at full speed as long as we can. We're not working, right? No, WTF Sky is actually at 5 o'clock. So I got to scoot. We're off of the air and then we start our show in about 4 minutes at WTF Sky. So yeah, politics, that's a uniter for sure. Very enthusiastic gardener, absolutely. There's no uniting anybody for that. That's very ironic. But anyway, Mari?
I'll get the link in the chat. I think you scheduled that on that channel, but it's private right now for some reason. God bless YouTube.
I'll bump it up to 5:30.
Well, I mean, I can just get the link, and it's up to you if you.
Yeah, let's bump it to 5:30 since it wasn't.
I have it public, and I will post the link.
That's why I couldn't find it
for that. Yeah, that's why it wasn't viewable, but I got the link right now. I'm gonna post it.
All right, so if you guys are interested in politics, and it's going to be something we're starting off new, political show on WTF Sky Mondays, and Tuesday is going to be Weird World News. I don't know, WTF Sky News, maybe that's what we'll call it. And then we'll do regular call-in shows on WTF Sky on Friday nights, and then Saturday night will just be open, whatever, music, comedy, who knows. You'll never know on Saturday nights with WTF Sky.
It's an open back take.
All right, guys. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you on Wednesday for our next Grand Solar Minimum News update. Till then, stay safe, and we'll talk soon, guys. Take care.
Do you like this show? Give us a thumbs up. Want to support us more? Share to your favorite social media platform. Buy a t-shirt or become a Patreon. All links are in the description below.